it's starting. As my email said, the story that I'm doing is called East of the Sun and West of the Moon, and it is a Norwegian fairy tale, and I chose to do a Scandinavian fairy tale because of my Scandinavian heritage, but we're not Norwegian, we're Swedish and Danish. Once upon a time, there was a poor peasant and his many children, and his children were all very beautiful, but the youngest was most beautiful of all. And not just was she beautiful, she also had a good, kind heart and was very sweet. So one day when the youngest was a young woman, and they had many of the children still lived at home with their kids and with all the grandchildren, there was a loud bang on the door, and the father opened the door cautiously because it was a cold winter night. And what did he see? A huge polar bear standing on their doorstep. Now, this wasn't an ordinary polar bear because this polar bear could speak. And he said to the poor peasant, "Sir, if you let me take your youngest daughter, you will be as rich as you are now poor." The peasant immediately thought, this could be really great for everything that's going on in our lives. We're really poor. We could use extra money. But the daughter immediately said, "No, I'm not going with the polar bear. What do we even know? I'm not sacrificing myself for that." So the father, the poor peasant, decided that they would talk about it. They had a whole week. The polar bear said he would return 1 week from that night. So after discussing all the pros and cons of what would happen, the young woman, because she was very kind, she said she would sacrifice herself for the family, and she went with the bear when he returned. So she climbed on the bear's back, and they traveled for how long she doesn't know. It was just a long time until they came to the base of a cliff. The polar bear took his paw and he banged on the base of the cliff, and a door appeared. They walk in, and it is this beautiful palace. Things that the young girl had never seen before. It was so beautiful. The bear gave her a bell and told her that if she rang it, anything that she wanted, she would get. She just needed to ring it. So she ate dinner, she rang the bell when she got tired, and she found herself in a beautiful bedroom. Everything that she needed. So obviously she was tired, she went to bed, and that night she woke up and there was a person laying next to her. And she was confused, a little bit scared, but not too scared because she felt okay about it. She felt calm. So this goes on for months and months. During the day, the young woman can do whatever she wants. She sometimes talks to the polar bear, not often, and every night a person is sleeping in bed next to her. Time passes, and she feels very lonely. She misses all of her siblings. She misses their boisterous energy. She misses her nieces and nephews. And so she tells the bear, I would really like to go visit my family. The bear tells her that, okay, you can, but remember, don't listen to your mother's advice. This is rare in these days. And so they travel to her family's new home, and they're now as rich as they were once poor. So they have this beautiful mansion where they all live quite comfortably. The mother keeps trying to get the daughter aside to talk to her alone, but the daughter keeps pushing her off. But eventually, as most mothers do, she prevails. And she asks the daughter to explain to her all the details of everything that's going on, everything that's in the castle or palace, everything she sees. And the daughter ends up explaining, there's someone sleeps with me every night, but I don't know who it is. And the mother says, how can you not know? What if it's a troll? What if it's a monster? How can you be okay with this? And she convinces the daughter to take a candle with her, and when she gets back to the palace, to light the candle to find out who, so she could see the face of the person sleeping next to her. So when the polar bear returns, and they return together to the palace, that night she lights a candle after the person has climbed into bed next to her. And what does she see but a handsome prince, the most handsome, and she falls in love immediately, as you're wont to do in a fairy tale. But at that moment, 3 drops of wax land on the prince, and he wakes up and he is so horrified. What have you done? And then he goes on to explain that because of her selfish actions of trying to find out who she was with, he now is going to be, he's been under a curse. He has to live as a polar bear by day, a human by night, and now because she couldn't just wait out 1 year, he's going to have to marry the goblin queen's, or the troll queen's daughter, the princess with the long nose. And then the princess wakes up. And she wakes up in a forest all by herself. The palace is gone. She doesn't know what happened, and she doesn't even know if this really was a dream. Was the prince real? Was the palace real? So she wants to find out. So she gathers herself, and she decides that she's going to try and find out if it's real. And she comes upon an old lady sitting on the porch of her hut playing with a golden apple. And she asks the old lady, "Do you know anything about the polar bear prince?" And the old lady says, "You mean the prince who is now going to have to marry the princess with the long nose?" And she says, "Yes, I was supposed to help." And the old woman says, "Oh, you were the girl and you failed." And she says, "Yes, but I don't want to fail now. I want to find him. Do you know how to get to do you know how to find him?" And the old woman says, "Well, he lives, the palace he is now in is east of the sun and west of the moon, but I don't know how to get there. But my next neighbor might know how to get there." So she lends the young woman her horse, and as a parting gift, gives her the golden apple and says, "When you get to my neighbor's house, just tap the horse under the left ear and she'll come trotting home." So the young woman travels for a long time, gets to a house, and on the porch of this house is an older old lady. And she is sitting there playing with golden carding combs. And she says, "Do you know how to get to the palace east of the sun and west of the moon? I'm looking for the polar bear prince." And the old woman says, "Oh, are you the young woman that was supposed to save him?" She says, "Yes, I was. I messed up, but I want to find him now. Do you know how to find him?" And the older old woman says, "Well, I don't know how to get there, but my next neighbor might know how." So she lends the young woman her horse and gives her the carding combs as a parting gift and says, "Once you get there, just tap it under the left ear and she'll come trotting home." So the young woman travels again, and she gets to a hut with an older old woman outside, and she is sitting there spinning wool with a golden spinning wheel. And she says, "Do you know how to get to the palace east of the sun and west of the moon?" And the older old lady says, "I don't. You were the girl that was supposed to save the prince, aren't you?" And she says, "I was, but I messed up. I really want to find him now." The older old woman says, I don't know where, but I think my friend the East Wind will know how to get there." So she lends her horse, gives her the golden spinning wheel as a parting gift, and says, "Tap the horse under the left ear and it'll come trotting home." So the young woman travels to the East Wind. The same story ensues. The East Wind doesn't know how to get there, but the West Wind might know how. So she rides the East Wind to the West Wind, where the East Wind explains to his brother, the West Wind, that she's looking for the palace of the east of the sun and west of the moon for the polar bear prince, that she didn't save the prince, but she wants to save him now. And the East Wind explains, I don't know how to get there, but our brother, the South Wind, might know how to get there. So she rides the East Wind to the South Wind, And the East Wind explains she's looking for the palace east of the sun, west of the moon. She was supposed to save the polar bear prince, but she didn't, but she wants to now. And the East Wind says, I've never been there. I don't know how to get there, but our brother the North Wind might, because he's stronger and more powerful than all of us. So she rides the South Wind to the North Wind, and the North Wind is the most powerful of all the Wind brothers. And he says, I do know how to get there. I one time blew a leaf all the way there. It is a long journey. You're going to be exhausted, and I'm going to be exhausted by the time we get there. But I will take you. So she rides the North Wind to the palace east of the sun and west of the moon. And when she gets there, she is able to find which room is... or which window belongs to the room of the troll princess, the princess with the long nose. So she sits under the troll princess with the long nose's window, playing with the golden apple. And then one morning she hears, where did you get that? She looks up and there's the princess with the long nose. She said, how much is that? I want to buy that. And the young woman says, it's not for sale for money or gold. And the princess with the long nose says, well, I want it. I'll buy it from you. What do you want? And the young woman says, I want a night with the prince. So they make a trade. That night, the young woman goes to the prince's room, and he's asleep. No matter how much shaking she does, how much screaming, how much crying, she cannot wake him up. The next morning, the princess with the long nose comes back in and says, get out. We made our deal. So the young woman is distraught, and she takes her gold carding combs, and she's carding wool with them underneath the princess with the long nose's window. And she hears the same thing. What is that? Where did you get that? How much? The young woman explains it's not for gold or money, and they agree that she will sell it for one more night with the prince. So she goes in there. Of course, the same thing happens. The prince is sleeping. She can't wake him up, no matter how much she shakes, no matter how much she cries, no matter how much she yells. So next morning, princess with the long nose, get out. So the young woman thinks, okay, I have one more chance. So she plays with the golden spinning wheel in front of the princess with the long nose's window. What is that? Where did you get that? How much? And the young woman tells the princess with the long nose, it's for one night with the prince, that I'll sell it to you. And luckily, there were other humans in the palace, and they had heard crying and screaming in the prince's bedroom the night before, and they told the prince. So that night, when the princess with the long nose came in to give him his night drink, sleeping potion, he pretended to drink it, but didn't. So when the young woman came in, they had a joyous reunion, and the young woman tells the prince her story, the meeting the three old women, riding the winds, and they make a plan to how they can save him. So the next morning, the prince pretends that he never woke up. The princess, or the young woman, is mad, and the princess with the long nose kicks her out, and that is also the prince's wedding day to the princess with the long nose. So it's just in the nick of time. So the prince's plan was that he's going to ask the queen of the trolls and the troll princess with the long nose to clean his shirt, and trolls don't have any ability to clean. That's why they rely on human servants. So he says he will not marry anyone that cannot do this for him. So he takes the shirt that the young woman had accidentally dropped the wax on, gives it to the troll princess and says, I will not marry you if you can't clean this shirt. So as the troll princess with the long nose tries to clean the shirt, the spot gets worse and worse and worse. She has no skills in this area. The troll queen is upset at her daughter, so she takes it and she tries to clean it. She just makes it even a bigger mess. So the prince says, well, you both are good for nothing. I bet that peasant girl outside can fix it. So in comes the young woman, and she is able to clean the shirt, and the prince says, now this is who I'm going to marry. The troll queen and the troll princess with the long nose were so upset they burst in the spot, and the spell was broken, and the palace was free to go. So the prince and his soon-to-be princess were able to take all the gold and free all the humans and live happily ever after.
Wow.